again, everyone. Thanks again for joining us. For those of you who just joined, welcome to our show. So what we'll be talking about today is how to transition into UX in this interesting age of artificial intelligence. So we have invited an awesome guest who is a seasoned UX professional and has lots of experience in the field. He has hired people and we share lots of insights on this topic and answer your questions as well. And we'll introduce our wonderful guest in just a few minutes. For those of you joining us for the first time, my name is Michael, and I'm the founder of a company called BeginX. We help people who know UX basics and want to transition into UX. Our program is a part-time UX career accelerator with real mission-driven client projects that provides a guaranteed way to become highly marketable and land a UX role. And unlike most traditional boot camps or career programs, we allow our participants to build real experience, strong real client portfolio, crucial soft skills like UX team collaboration, client and stakeholder management, presenting, and master the UX job search and interviewing necessary to actually land a UX role. All in a collaborative and fun environment and under the guidance of industry practitioner mentors from top companies. And I don't mean this to brag or anything like that, but just to give you a bit more of a background for credibility purposes. The company is headquartered in New York City, and we've run many virtual cohorts and helped probably around like 160 people or so get hired into UX roles. We'll tell you a bit more about our virtual program and also make a special announcement closer to the end of the event. And of course, that part is completely optional for you. So here are some of the companies that the grads were hired by, and there are many, many more. So essentially, we've seen lots of people go through this entire UX career transition journey. And so next, what I want to do is get to the most fun part and introduce our awesome guest speaker, and who is actually kind enough to do a whole talk, like not a whole talk, but it's a quick talk about AI plus UX, right? And how AI is basically reshaping the field, right? That will also help set the stage for our interview, right? And then in the interview, we're not going to talk just about the transition, right? So we're actually going to look at it from this AI angle as well, right? So basically what has changed, how things are evolving, what is different, etc. Right? So I'm really excited to actually about the discussion and really excited to have Danny on as well, because first of all, he is just a UX veteran basically and spent lots of years in the field. And second, he's now also an expert in AI plus UX, right? So he's even built his own course on AI plus UX. He's basically really studied this in depth. So I'm really excited to have this discussion. So, Danny, would love to bring you back on. Would you like to briefly introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. Thanks for having me. So, hi everyone, Danny Setiawan. So, I've been in this field for a while, came from graphic design. Graphic design became web design, and web design became this UX thing. I work all over the place from being part on affiliate network marketing to create banner ads and all those things to working for agencies, working for Yahoo Finance, The Economist, internal product team from web consistency to mobile apps, the whole thing. And also I used to work for General Assembly and Flatiron School for their enterprise and also campus for help the boot camps to teach people who want to transition to UX. Also running the UX support group. Some of you probably came from there. So I've been all over the place. And recently I worked for American Eagle it's an agency, a web agency essentially, and again work on multiple projects for different clients. And the most exciting thing for me now is the course that Michael mentioned, because it helps position us as UX people to not only survive this change, but to actually dominate, to position ourselves to dominate in this change. And we can unpack that a little bit more later.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, Danny. So again, as I mentioned, really excited to have you on today. And yeah, so from here, let's move forward. And you want to proceed to the talk that you have prepared?
Sure, sure. So I mentioned that the part that's really exciting for me to see this year is that um, you design and UX particularly is actually being positioned to dominate, as in like we become more and more important. With AI, some of you probably heard of this if you heard of these tools called Lovable, Bold, Magic Patterns. These ones for like vibe coding. I would love to get you guys to put like number one on the chat so I can get a sense. So these are tools essentially that allows us to prototype really quickly, high fidelity prototype without using Figma, right? In the past, like whatever, 6 months, I haven't used Figma at all, and I don't miss it. I can move like 10 times faster. And the quality is even better because it's actually done in code. But then what does that mean for us? What that means for us is that we can get to user testing faster. And user testing become cheaper, faster, then UX people becomes the differentiator for businesses. The companies that know their customers the most will actually deliver the most value and get the business, especially when the market becomes filled and littered with a lot of products, right? Like for those of you in New York, well, in any cities really, you have hundreds and thousands of restaurants, but you go to the same restaurants over and over because those restaurants serve your need the most. You like them for whatever reason. It's customized to you in a way, right? So it's the same thing with a lot of other products that we use. We have I'm sure that you guys all remember when apps became big thing and then everybody's got like so many apps on the phone. But in the end, we all just ended up using the same less than 10 apps every day. And maybe occasionally when we need to, we use that one app, right? And that's the thing, like what makes something sticky is really the user experience. That's why I'm very excited about this. And there's a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty out there. And that actually gives us the opportunity to define the role of UX again in different in the companies in the value chain, if you will. Um, and the other thing that's really interesting is that, especially in the context of you guys who are transitioning into UX, is that no one has 10 years of AI and UX experience. The crazy thing is that a lot of the senior people are getting left behind because a lot of if you go to Reddit or like even LinkedIn, you'll see a lot of the senior people are saying that, oh yeah, this thing can't do this thing can't do this. This thing is not ready because they're afraid. And also, if they haven't really touched Figma or haven't like designed in many, many years, that's humiliating in a way. And I had to go through this because I've been in this industry so many years. And then I'm like, oh, snap, I have to relearn all these things again. And this market is really interesting because AI is becoming the equalizer, making the playing field level again. Everybody has to learn it. And I'm sure you guys have been seeing also a lot more staff and like principal product designers because not even the managers, the directors will need to design again. And everybody will have to learn these skills again. It's the new computer skills. So this is a really exciting times for you guys to transition. And I highly, highly encourage you guys to use this AI thing to your benefit because again, it's not even a fair game. Like in my course, I remember in the second class, we do this thing with the pulse, basically at the start of the class, we have the conversation just to check in with people. One of the students said, I don't know if I could tell people this feels unfair. This feels like I'm cheating. Well, it is in a way because technology allows you to do that. But if you have like the foundational design process, it's just designing, you're making a decision. And the interesting thing with this is that if you could use these tools to get things built faster and test faster, you gain experience faster also. And you could even use it to learn new things. For example, one of the barriers that Michael mentioned is potentially uh, as new designers, the you don't have a project that's been implemented, you don't have the chance to work with developers, right? You can ask the AI, like, if you were a developer, what would you ask me? How would you evaluate this? That's kind of like a way to go around it. It doesn't really replace working with real developers, but it at least prepares you for it, right? So there's a lot of things that is changing, and I highly encourage you guys to lean into it. and focus deeper actually into the UX, the human side of things, because the human things don't change while the tools and the technology changes all the time and it's changing faster and faster. Okay. So that was my TED Talk, Michael.
All right. Amazing. That was pretty fast. I thought you were going to be talking for like 30 minutes.
No, no, no. I don't like that. I like to make people work. I don't like to just like give
So
them
you want
lectures.
people do the talking.
Yep. Because that's where they learn.
Exactly, right? What was that saying? I see and I forget. No, I hear and I forget. I see and I remember. I do and I understand, I think.
Yep.
All right. Amazing. So thank you for this. And by the way, just a quick reminder, right? So for everyone in the audience, if you have a question, please use the Q&A tab. This way, you can also upvote others' questions, and please do so. Please review others' questions and upvote them. And we make sure that we address the most popular ones, right? That many of you are interested in. And basically, this way we address everything that is like the questions that are most important and most popular. And just a reminder, we'll make a special announcement about the program we're running closer to the end of the event, and we'll also share the career transition roadmap summary handout. So stick around if you'd like to get that. And also, I know Danny mentioned UX support group. If you're not
Mhm.
aware about it, you should join. It's a really awesome place. It's a meetup. So you can, Danny, maybe later you can share the link if you want.
Mhm.
So this is a great place. I've received heard lots of great feedback about the group. So
Yeah, I'll share a few different links, but mainly like so people want if you wanted to connect with me on LinkedIn, I'll share that. And also from there, if you're interested in the course, we are running that now, but this is the first week, so you can still join with like discounted. There's gonna be a heavy discount because it started on Tuesday, but first week, so you can catch up. And also there's a free AI prototyping workshop that I did for to promote the course that I could like send you the link also. Basically, seeing how Figma is basically gonna die, if you're curious. Anyways, on that note, go ahead, Michael.
all right, amazing. So Danny, so you've seen the UX field evolve a lot over the years,
Yeah.
right? So in addition to what you just mentioned, can you briefly describe maybe how it's changing now with AI, especially for those
hmm
trying to enter the fields? Maybe just at a high level. We'll get into more
hmm
specifics in a bit.
At the very, very, very high level, this is not just UX, but it definitely applies to UX. UX and also engineering. For the longest time, the hardest thing is to create something from scratch, from zero to one. And now with generative AI, creating especially digital products, right? Because generative AI create products, digital assets, digital content is too easy, fast and easy. Then the problem becomes evaluating and integrating. And that's what's changing dramatically now. For the longest time, the question has always been, okay, which tool should we adopt? So, back in the day, there was Photoshop, Photoshop becomes Sketch, Sketch and Vision becomes Figma, right? People have been asking, which tool should I learn next? It's actually the wrong question because the tool will continue changing. What you need to learn is like the more fundamental level of like the design process itself. So that's the biggest shift that I've seen is like the mindset shift of not just about creating, but evaluating and seeing where the value is.
Okay, okay. Yeah, that's quite interesting. So let's start off like basically we'll run through this framework that I just covered earlier,
hmm
but obviously with the whole AI angle, right? Like coming from an AI angle, right? So let's start off with the hard skills, right? What are the most important hard UX skills that you think candidates should focus on today? And how do you think those changed due to AI?
So the underlying skills are, for the most of it, are the same. Like, for example, you needed to know how to do user research, right? Survey, creating survey, user interviews, and then like defining the problem, creating persona, user flow diagramming, wireframing, da 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 da. You need to know how to do that. But then now, with the help of these different AI tools, again, 0 to 1 is much faster, but you still need to know why you do it, who's gonna use it, and why. I think you had mentioned earlier, Michael, the mindset that's very, very important in life and actually applied to this also, not just career transition, but also in this is start with the end in mind, right? You need to always know, you need to always decide, okay, this is where I'm going before I start. Otherwise, you're gonna get lost. And that's the thing. In terms of the hard skills, it's the same skills.
Okay, okay. All right, so that makes sense. So let's talk briefly about the tools. I know you mentioned Lovable, right? So are there
Mhm.
any additional AI tools that you think newer designers or UX professionals should get familiar with? And how can they
Mhm.
actually start experimenting with those?
Yeah, in my course, we mainly use Claude because Claude, in my personal design process, I mainly use Claude all the way from like the beginning to like wireframing and some mid-fidelity prototyping, and then went straight to Lovable or Bold or V0, one of these. That's why I mean, like I skipped Figma. The only reason why I would go back to Figma is if I worked with people who are in Figma, right? Then I would bring it back to Figma. Yeah, and then so my suggestion for you guys is to get into one of these foundational, if you will, like the general use like Claude, Gemini, Grok, or ChatGPT, and get really comfortable using those on a day-to-day and start finding opportunities to use them in your design process.
Thank you, Danny. And by the way, we have a question. I think someone, Mark is, who was it? Robert was asking, you mind listing the tools that you mentioned? So yeah, Robert, we'll try to uh, get that to you maybe in a bit
Yeah, I think
when
actually
we answer
Mark
questions.
answered that. The Vercel, V0, Lovable, Bold. I know I'm not familiar with Trickle AI actually. There's magic patterns, there's subframe. The main thing is love. So this is the thing that is overwhelming for a lot of people getting into this. I mean, I felt this too. There's so many of them, and every single day, one tool appears saying that, oh, this changes everything. This is why you need to go to the place where you know that it's solid, which is your design process. Then you can plug and play the tools. In fact, in like week 4 of my course, we were doing this like prototyping AI interface. And then at the time, one of the tools that we normally use was down. But like within 30 minutes, the students were able to get everything done. They just used a different tool. It's the same thing. It's essentially almost like learning the operating system as opposed to the application level skills. Like if you knew how to use uh, the iOS apps, right, the typical iPhone apps, then most likely you know how to use other iPhone apps. It's the same thing with AI. So my suggestion is to focus on the workflow level, not on the tool level. Because if you trying to catch and chase the tools, you're gonna get overwhelmed and it's going to actually stress you out to know it.
Yeah, this is great. And by the way, Daniel, let me just for those folks who are like newer to the whole like AI tool space, do you want to maybe give a little bit more detail in terms of like which tool is used during which phase of the process, kind of map it, what you use more for research versus
Mhm.
basically what exactly each tool is used for?
So that's a hard one to answer because a lot of these tools can do a lot of things, and underneath a lot of them are the same brain, the same LLM. But to answer your question, typically in my process, if I'm doing like market research, then I would use either Perplexity, Gemini, or Grok, or sometimes I use all of them at the same time to see patterns, right? And then there is for the day-to-day, like after that, if I wanted to create, let's say, a survey, I want to ideate on what survey questions, like the survey layout, the controls, all these things, I would use Claude, interview, script, planning, I would use Claude. So a lot of these in Claude, right? Because I get used to the way Claude communicates and I know what to expect. So all the way until from there, from doing user research things and also analyzing, synthesizing, a lot of times I use Claude, or I could go to Notebook LM from Google. Notebook LM is really good for that. It can even create some kind of podcast for you. From there, I would go continue in Claude. For the most part, I stick with Claude and I would create different agents with like different system prompt to give them different roles. For example, you're a user researcher doing for one project. Another one, you're an information architect, right? So create sitemap and whatnot. So there, wireframing and everything until I'm comfortable with the wireframes in Claude. Then I would take it for high fidelity. I would take it to like Lovable or Magic Pattern, one of these.
Hmm. Wow, lots of names, lots of tools.
That's why I
Amazing.
was hesitant to answer the question. But the bottom line is that what's interesting is in my course at the beginning, people asked this very question, which tool? But then at the end, they didn't care. They're just like, yep, I know. Even if the new
Hmm.
tool comes to existence, I know how to use it. The confidence is just like high, like just the same thing. Like if you got a new iPhone tool, you've been using iPhone apps, you know how, I mean, new iPhone app, you know how to use it.
Hmm. Yeah, it makes sense. Would you say it's similar to kind of how, like with tools, with prototyping tools before, or design tools before, like whether you use Figma or Sketch, it's more important what do you actually do with it and kind of knowing to the concepts, not the
Oh,
actual tool
definitely.
itself.
Definitely. And then like what's interesting about this whole thing is the importance of the hard skills becoming hard skill as in like the hand doing things, pushing things and moving things around, the hand skills become less and less important. The fundamental principles and the process becomes really important. And then the really high soft skills become super important because then you need to know why you're creating this or directing the AI to create something that you could actually use to engage stakeholders because at the end of the day, that's what you do, right? You created deliverables or artifacts so that you can move in the design process, move it forward.
Hmm. So what happens, I'm going off the script a bit, but what happens if someone who is not knowledgeable in UX starts using these
Mhm.
tools, what do you think happens?
They would see garbage, right? Garbage in, garbage out. Because these LLMs, this AI, are super eager to create things to please the users,
Hmm.
right? Because at the end of the day, it's also a product that these companies want to push, want to satisfy the users. Then they would, for example, just a very example, let's say instead of going through the UX design process, I just went to Lovable and say, create um, a mobile banking app for me. It would try its best. But then when I started presenting it, it would have like the best guess of what it thinks I wanted, but it may have like random crap that when I present it to my stakeholders, they'd be like, why is this here? And I wouldn't be able to answer because I didn't do the thinking. So the designer still needs to be in the driver's seat to make the decision because design is making decisions. That's what design is.
Awesome. Yeah, I love it. So, and by the way, if you guys are brand new to these tools and everything, right? So, and if you have questions, don't hesitate to put those into Q&A. And yeah, we'll try to get to as many questions as possible. So, as we're going through this, because obviously tools are important and hard skills are important, but it's only one of those areas, and often not the most critical one, to be honest, to make this whole transition. All right. So if you have more questions about tools or hard skills, definitely put those in Q&A. Danny, let's move on to soft skills. Like, what do you think are the actual top soft skills that hiring managers look for, especially more junior candidates who are basically transitioning, making this transition? How can one actually gain or build those? And also, which ones help junior UX people stand out in an AI influenced UX environment?
So in terms of the soft skills, right, it's the human part. When you're, I'm going to go into the whole just hiring process in general. Typically, when I was hiring, well, anyone is hiring, they're only looking for two things. One is that the hard skill, can you do the job, competency? Number two, do I like you? Do I want to work with you? A lot of times they call that cultural fit, but essentially that's what it is, right? So the first soft skill is really to show that you're a good listener, that you're actually interested, you're passionate, right? That your empathy, which is like the heart of UX, is the most important thing. And then the second part of that is being able to communicate in an effective way, right? So knowing when to push, knowing when to like direct the conversation, knowing how to ask questions, which is again something that we learn. Those are keys. Because while you're interacting with the hiring managers or like the hiring team, they would be evaluating you not on this like check boxes things like checklist. The hard skill, they would be using that kind of checklist. For example, do you know how to wireframe? Do you have evidence of doing prototyping? But then when the soft skills being evaluated, they're more thinking about how do I feel about this person? Do I like this person? Sometimes they try to use some kind of more uh I guess like concrete measurement, but this is at the end of the day, it's really about do I want to work with this person? Will this person make my life easier or not? Will this person make me look good, look bad? Those are the things, right? So a big part of that is that is it easy for them to communicate with you, to work with you? So they could already imagine how working with you would be like.
Mm. And how do you build those skills?
Well, that's why you need to actually work like in your program, you have that collaboration, right? Actively working with people. That's at the end of the day, that's the way, really. You can't really it's a skill, so you have to build it. I mean, I'm sure you guys all have these friends who are amazing friends, but you wouldn't want to work with them. And vice versa. There are some people who you can work with, but you wouldn't want to be friends with them, right? So in this case, it's the professional side of things. There are some people who don't have the skills. They're like too friendly, and they never learn the skills to work effectively. For example, meetings. The most important thing in a meeting is to know if you're the organizer, to know what the goal, why are we here, the objective and the agenda. Surprisingly, a lot of people don't even know how to do this. So if you show up with that, for example, in an interview, and then even though you're not actually leading the interview, you could be quote unquote leading the way the conversation is going. But like, okay, if I understand correctly, what you're trying to assess is this. If I'm missing anything, please let me know. Is there anything else? Right? So then you have like a clear goal, a common goal together where you're going in that conversation at the time together.
Okay, okay. So basically through practice, right? So through practice and experience and by actually doing, right? You can
You got to do it.
obviously read about communication and read about presentation, right? And could be helpful, right? To just get the gist of it, understand like what you're
Yeah,
doing.
get the
But
theory, but you need
yeah,
to actually practice it to become a skill.
yeah. If you can choose from one or the other, choose the practice because many people make this mistake of just getting into this endless rabbit hole of content consumption without actually doing or applying or implementing any of it. So,
Yeah, just like what Mike Tyson said, right? Everybody has a plan until they got punched in the mouth.
exactly. All right. Danny, how do I break into UX without that professional experience? And does AI level the playing field or raise the bar?
I think it will be interesting to see in the next year or two how AI becomes the next computer skill that we all know it's not going away. It's going to become the must-have skill, and people who could leverage it can go like so many like times faster. Uh, and in terms of people who are entering without experience, I would like you guys to think about experience in a different way from like the numbers, right? Because like a lot of times when we talk about experience, we think about it in terms of, oh, do I have 5 years of experience in the field? Now, if let's say person A had 5 years of experience, but only doing wireframing, mid-fidelity wireframe for 5 years, while person B has only on paper 1 year experience, but has worked in a let's say a startup environment, that person had gone through like many uh, rounds of iteration from user research to like the whole process and like over and over, which one had more experience, right? So on paper, it looks like person A had more experience, but actually person B in reality has more experience. Another way to look at it, let's say that if you're going from New York to Boston driving, right? And then you in 6 months, you're only like going there once and you plan the perfect ride, perfect like road trip, only going once versus somebody who will do like less planning, but goes there every week. In that 6 months, who's got more experience? Obviously, the person who is doing it every week, right? Because they've gone through many use cases. Now, how does AI help with this? AI can help speed up that experience cycle, learning this, and also can help you figure out what else that you need to learn, can become like your coach. A lot of times, like finding a mentor is hard. It doesn't replace human mentors, but you can also use it to help you identify what kind of mentor do you need. One of the things that annoys me when I was mentoring people is when the mentee show up and like, okay, I don't know. And I'm like, well, what do you want me? How do you want me to help you? Right? With this, you can create your own roadmap in a way and really know what to ask from people. And this will speed up your process significantly.
Mm. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it also reminds me of basically a point that not all experience is equal, basically, right? And then you
Mhm.
can you can do the same thing for 5 years, and it looks amazing. Could look amazing on your resume if you describe it okay, but in reality, right, you could technically have less skills, less experience, less knowledge than
Mhm.
someone doing something really intensely for like a year, right? So,
Yeah, and just one more thing to add to that is I'm sure you guys have heard of the design challenge. More and more companies are bringing this back. So as part of this is using AI could really help you prepare for that.
mm. Yeah, that's good. Do you see more and more companies using that like a whiteboard challenge format or a take-home design challenge?
I think because the market is on their side right now, a lot
Mm-hmm.
of them are using both.
Mm-hmm.
They
Mm-hmm.
get the pick, right? So, but this is your opportunity if you use AI and you could like get it done faster and even better, iterate multiple times. This is your opportunity to shine, really.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I see some questions here in Q&A, so let's make it more interactive and because one particular question from Jaslyn, and by the way, if I mispronounce anyone's name, sorry, not intentional, of course. um, because this question is specifically about foundations and basics and hard skills, etc. Right? So I think it's a great time to take this before we move on to portfolio, etc. So Jocelyn is asking, most people say AI covers baseline entry-level skills. If we adopt them this early, wouldn't it compromise learning opportunities for foundations? As an early career UX researcher, how can we strengthen our skills with AI in this field while still building a strong foundation and skills?
That is actually spot on. This is the biggest tension right now in education, right? This is why I'm a strong proponent of active learning, like learning by doing, which I mentioned earlier. Okay, so what's the answer to this question? Right? Yes, you need to know how to do it by hand to actually learn the foundational stuff. It's kind of like doing math by hand, but then you use calculator at work. So you need to know how to use both, right? Um, but then spend more time not on the actual tools to create the thing. For example, if you're doing math by hands, don't spend time like worrying about how neat your numbers look, but actually the concept itself, right? Like actually the skill, the understanding, the core understanding. So that's what I recommend. And also from the other side, I mentioned that this whole AI thing shifted the mindset from like the generation, like creating from 0 to 1 to actually evaluation and integration. So imagine this, right? Like there's this study, I think by MIT, which I was like, my response was like, no shit, was that they said that they did a brain scan of students who use AI to write essays and who didn't use AI to write essays. And they said that the people who use AI to to write the essay use less brain power. And I'm like, yeah, you really need to use brain scan and do research of that. Yeah, of course, right? And then it's just like, what the hell? The point being, if the education is more towards evaluating, imagine this, instead of saying, oh, you cannot use AI to write essay, or like trying you get caught, then you get whatever. Just assume that everybody uses AI. And then the first class, instead, we assume that everybody uses AI, the first class you have to present it, right? So evaluation, to start with the evaluation assumption, everybody uses it. Like now, we assume everybody uses Google already. So that's the next level. So to answer your question, Jocelyn, is focus, yes, learn the thing, but make sure that you know why you're learning that. And like especially the tools part. If there are tools for user research, for example, right? There is no point writing the script by hand. If you could have AI to help you create the outline, for example, and actually flesh out the script itself. But it's worthwhile doing like the research guide, the very first time, the research question, and then the first outline by hand. But the script itself, make AI do it. But rehearse, then you need to rehearse it as a human. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. And I think, Danny, you mentioned a great point before as well. Essentially, kind of understanding the concepts behind what you're doing, right? So you still need that, right? Because as you said, if you don't understand what you're doing, right, you're just going to get garbage out and you will
Mhm.
not even realize that you're getting garbage, right?
Yeah, and
Until
you
it's
wouldn't
too
know how to
late.
fix that. And you wouldn't know how to fix it, right? You wouldn't know how to refine it. The AI
Yeah.
will take you from 0 to 80%, but the remaining 20% will make or break. So you wouldn't know how to get to finish line if you didn't know the fundamentals. You wouldn't know what to ask.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So basically, yeah, I think the answer is like somewhere in the middle.
Hmm.
Basically, you still need to learn, you still need to practice some by hand, you still need to understand things, but
Hmm.
then don't overdo it. Then leverage AI and then just build and learn on top of that,
Yeah,
basically,
it's
right?
a
So it's
tool, right?
yeah.
What I like to use as an analogy is that it's like jumping on a bullet train, but you need to know where you're going and what you're trying to do. If you just jump on a bullet train and you don't know where it's going, you're gonna end up where you don't want to end up at.
Yeah, exactly. Jaslyn, let us know in the chat if that clarifies your question. And I see more questions here. Sarah, Farouk, Salome, thank you. And Farouk and Salome, thank you for finally putting your questions in Q&A. Yeah, we'll get to your questions quite soon as well. Um, so, Danny, here's what I also wanted to ask you.
Hmm.
Um, how can one actually build work experience when most employers are already looking for candidates with that 1 or 2 years of that experience, even for many entry-level roles?
Well, I think that's something that unfortunately you have to be proactive and create opportunities for yourself. And I know that a program like BeginX helps you with that, or you have to actually find your own client. You don't need permission from people to gain experience. That's something that a lot of people don't realize. You don't need permission. Just you can do a project for your local barbershop or whatever, right? You could just do it or like redesign something. But it's better if you could have that client interaction, if you could have like the real client interaction, because that's the reason why companies ask for real world experience is they want to know how you navigate those kind of things because the real world is messy. But yeah, so don't wait for the experience to come to you. You got to make it happen, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah. So it's yeah, to add to that, so there are um, a few ways you can do it, right? So the good news is that you don't have to have a job to get experience, right? Because you don't have to be in that catch 22 because you'll just get stuck in it, right? You can obviously there are a few different channels and options like internships, for example, right? And we can talk about advantages and disadvantages. You can use volunteering. You can try to freelance, but I would like freelance is tricky. Like if you can I would rather do something like volunteer and pro bono work when you actually know somebody and just volunteer and offer them your help, right? That can really help. Um, that can help you have some leverage over the work, right? Because if somebody hires you, if you're brand new, somebody hires you and they have all the control and they have control of the budget, et cetera, and they pay you maybe quite a bit as well, right? You don't have any control over the like how the project will actually look like, how your case study will look like. Do you cover all the phases? Like, it's actually going to be useful for you, right? So you might win in the short term at making some money, but you can lose in the long term by not getting a great case study. So that's something to always to think about, like if you're trying to build that real experience in some way. And of course, you can enroll into a program like ours as well.
I would say do all of the above, honestly. Because the freelance could give you a different kind of experience from like working with pro bono. But the things with that's really good with a program like BeginX is you get mentorship. That's super valuable because a lot of times when you're new and you're getting into a freelance situation, you may end up with like this is what I experienced in my early days with something that you can't really use, and that could end up being like a waste of time. Like what Michael said, you make money, but is it getting you closer to your goal? That said, if there's money coming, take it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I would say like one of the advantages of doing a structured program is basically it's not that you can completely do you can totally do something like this on your own, right? You can basically follow the tips that we went through earlier
Mhm.
in terms of building that real experience, getting those case studies, etc. It's possible. The challenges is just much more work, and will take much more time if you do it on your own, right? Because ideally you want to have a team, ideally you want to have a great collaborative client, ideally you want to have a mentor, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? And a buy-in, and for them to actually be wanting to collaborate with you and kind of sell your services to them, even if you're doing it pro bono, right? So basically it can take some time, right? So I'd say the key advantage, basically, if you want to zoom through that much faster and save time, that's when you do a structured program like ours, or maybe some other one, right? If you know some other one. So I'd say, yeah, that's one of the key advantages overall.
Yeah, I think
Basically, yeah.
just to add to that, this is also what I've been telling people for my course as well. So courses or structured education, the value is actually that you're buying time because there is cost associated with not having a job, like the opportunity cost, right? Every day if you could be making X amount, and I counted this like for like people with like 1 or 2 years of experience in UX in New York City is about 80K. So that's about 1,500 a week that you're not making if you're moving slower. So that's a real cost in a way, right? And mentorship and all these things is actually speeding you to that to get there faster. And in terms of the information, you can find this online. Everything is online. The problem is actually the opposite of not having information. It's too much information. How do you distill it? How do you say no? For example, very simple. I'm sure you guys have experienced this. Portfolio feedback, right? One person say, "Oh, you don't need, you need too much. I mean, you have too much content." Somebody else say, "Oh, you need to add more content." Somebody say, "You need to add more pictures." Somebody else say, "Oh, no, there's too much pictures. We need to add more words, more headings." Somebody said they could be like coming from the same level of experience from people. Which one do you listen to?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Just making sense out of all this information,
Yep.
of all the content, and kind of understanding what to actually do with it. All right. So Danny, here's what I also wanted to ask, and then I want to take a couple of questions as well.
hmm
Um, in your opinion, what are the top three things that make a UX portfolio highly effective?
So I think this is okay. I'm going to put you guys in the place of hiring manager. I remember this was like in the good old days, even in the good days, when I hired for one position, I got like more than 200 applicants, right? So then how much time do I spend per portfolio? Less than a minute, way less than a minute. So which ones actually stand out? The first thing is that I'm looking for signal. The first signal is it's unfortunately it's like a dating app. If it looks like crap, I pass, right? So that's the first thing. Number two, the second thing is that if especially for the junior designer, if the title says, I remember seeing this person said that I'm a musician who dabble in UX, pass. I didn't even look at the work because I'm like, you're a musician. I'm not hiring a musician, right? So if you own it, who are you? Identity, right? So that the visual, and then also the next thing I would do is I would like look at the homepage, see the projects that are there. Michael mentioned earlier minimum three. That's actually true. If I saw less than three, normally I'll be like, nah, I don't think this person has enough experience for me to gauge. Not even like whether they're good or not. I don't think that there's enough information for me to assess, pass. And the three, then the next thing I would ask is like, do they look interesting or they're like cookie cutter? If they're cookie cutter, but they seem decent, they seem good. There's like one, let's say for example, I'm looking for mobile. They have like something with mobile. I'm like, okay, then I give this person a chance. I will go in, right? Now, to make that more um effective for you, you need to learn how to position yourself. This is the thing that I think, Michael, you mentioned earlier. You need to learn how to market, right? Marketing. A big part of marketing is positioning yourself. Position, like for example, if I'm hiring for somebody in fintech, and you mentioned something about finance and fintech, and then you mentioned also something, maybe you did something with crypto, right? You would get my attention. Or you have something with online payment, you would get my attention. If you're trying to be everything for everyone, that's the recipe for not being noticed. So you need to know also create basically using the same skill of creating persona, but company persona. Who are you targeting? And use this for the lack of better term, gimmicky things, AI, crypto, blockchain. I saw something, I think Robert mentioned about VR, right? If I saw like just another website, another website, another website, and this one like Roberts has VR, like, oh, that's interesting. Out of curiosity, I would want to spend more time. So if nothing else, I would say that own the identity, own your new identity as a UX designer, UX researcher, whatever that is, multiply with maybe a sector that you want to work in, multiply with an a technology or something that's more gimmicky in a sense that you could use to get people's attention. That's how I would position it.
Thanks, Danny. Yeah, that's good. And by the way, so I'm looking at Salome's question. So Salome, let us know if we're, because I think as we're moving through these portfolio and case study topics and experience, right, we're kind of answering because you have asked like this pretty big question: how does one create a portfolio without experience, right? So we're moving through these topics specifically. But Danny, do you want to add anything to that? Like, how does one create a portfolio without experience?
How does one create portfolio without experience? I think you just need to come up with a project idea and create your, for example, um, can you redesign Zoom to be better? That's one. That's a project, right? Can you make LinkedIn better? So if you found something that's you're frustrated with, then redesign it. Don't redesign the entire thing. Redesign just maybe the a part of it, right? Um, or find a problem in your circle. Let's say a friend of yours is trying to start a bakery. Ask that, can I design a website for you? Or just design one for them, actually. The worst case scenario, they say, oh yeah, I don't want to use it, but you have a project.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And by the way, Salome, if you were referring to experience only from like real professional experience, I think that's what we covered just before that, right? So what I would add is, especially in the current market, I would not even waste your time trying to get that role without any experience, and I would just get the experience, right? So through the channels that I mentioned earlier, like you could volunteer, you could try to find an internship, you could, again, basically what I just mentioned, right? So try to do one of those, try to have 3 case studies total. If you have two of the real clients, you'll have an advantage over most people who are trying to enter the field. Because right now, I mean, the market is still tough, right? So 2023 was probably the worst in terms of layoffs and flooding the market. 2024 was a little bit still bad, a little bit better, based on at least like based on what I researched. And 2025, it's still not easy. It's still far from perfect, but it's slowly getting back up and getting a little better. right? So it may still take a lot of time. We actually did a whole talk with a whole like talk and an interview with Jared Spool. If you want to, it's on our site on the resources section, virtual event recordings. And he did this great talk for like about 40 minutes in terms of the job market, where it's heading, why it's there, what's the general long-term growth trend, etc. And the key point is basically the companies overhired during the pandemic. Then the correction, once things started coming back to a more normal life type of situation, then that's when all the layoffs started happening, which flooded the market. And so we're still dealing with that, right? So long-term trajectory is still great. It's just going to take some time for it to, it's still going to grow steadily, right? Just without the
Mm.
craziness of 2020 and then 2023.
Yeah, like, can I add one thing then,
Yeah.
Michael? So yeah, like what I said earlier, I think in the long term, I'm actually very bullish. I'm very positive, optimistic about the role and the value that UX design, research, I think it will be combined, provide for companies because we will be needed more and more as people want to know what the humans want and how human behaves more and more. And Salome, you asked about mentor or instructor. I think these are the kind of thing that structured programs like boot camps or like what Michael offers or like even what I offer, like it's provide these things so that by the end of the program, you already have something that you can add to your portfolio, right? So that's a quick way. That's one way to go to the express lane, if you will, to have a project or two to your portfolio to add them is to join some of these courses.
Yeah, that's makes sense. And I think Salome also mentioned try to find an internship, but most of them require portfolios. Yes, that's true, and you definitely need to create a portfolio first, right? So it's um, and I know it's a little bit of a catch-22, but we typically, so what I would recommend is it's okay if the first project is hypothetical, right? It's actually probably better because you don't want to like know nothing yet and basically jump into working with real clients right away, right? You need to learn the basics, need to learn the fundamentals in some form by doing some hypothetical stuff first. And then after that, makes sense to try to volunteer, etc. And with internships, it can be tricky, right? Because if you can find a great one, it's amazing, right? And it can get you great experience, etc. The problem with many internships is that a lot of their requirements are often similar to actual jobs. So you can run into the same roadblocks, right? And then a lot of internships are basically having you do this like very low level, meaningless work that will not really get you any useful experience that you can showcase on your resume or your portfolio, right? So you probably want to avoid that as well, unless there's some other benefit for you, right? If your goal is to actually build out useful case studies. Um, yeah, so just kind of wanted to add to that point. So let us know if that clarified your questions. And Jaslyn also came back to us. Um, so Jaslyn says, thank you. Would that mean it would look good to show where you incorporated AI in case studies, as this would show you mixing learning foundations and new tools, a demonstration of a good balance?
Definitely, yes. But at the end of the day, the proof is in the pudding, right? They say it. So essentially, using AI need to show that it's actually better, not just using AI because you want to show that you use AI, right? So is it actually better and faster? And in fact, this is something that a lot of earlier or entry level UX people struggle with, which is showing the actual metric of improvement, right? So things like this with AI, if you could use the metric of before, AI is this, with after AI this, then that could actually help. And also there are two parts of working with AI. One is working with AI, as in like using AI to help you in your process. And the second part is working to create AI product, right? AI feature, AI product. So depending on which one that you want to showcase in your portfolio, it could be both in your case study. You need to also have a clear idea. Okay, what am I trying to show here?
Yeah, thank you, Danny. And by the way, great questions from Sarah and Farouk. Yeah, I love all the questions coming. So feel free to post more of those. We'll try to get to as many as possible. And Sarah, we'll get to yours next in a second. Um, Danny, what are the biggest mistakes that candidates actually make in their portfolios or resumes based on your experience?
I think the biggest one, especially in this market, is trying to do just the bare minimum. So one of the typical questions that I get from like my former students or like people who are entering the market is that how many pieces of case study should I have in my portfolio? And it sounds like a good question, but the underlying question is what is the minimum? If you're trying to you go to the other side, you're trying to hire somebody, you're not trying to hire the minimum. You're trying to hire the best you can find for your money, right? And this is the same thing with everyone. So the mindset should be, how can I become extraordinary? I like to use that word because that means that you meet the baseline of ordinary and extra. This is why I mentioned earlier, like the positioning with the sector, with the AI, with this, with this. So you still have like three or maybe four, but then you meet the requirement, the ordinary, but you have the extra, like the real world experience, for example. That's another extra, right? When everybody else, like for example, I'm looking at portfolio, like, okay, same thing, same thing, same thing. Oh, this one is like, it's different. It has this, it has that, the extra. Those are the ones that make me want to talk to them. So the biggest mistake is that mindset of what is the bare minimum.
Yeah, it's I would definitely second that. And not just in terms of number of case studies, but in terms of just doing things. Or like even based on our recent experience hiring, right? We actually picked someone who went the extra step. You would be surprised. A lot of candidates, majority of candidates, they actually do the minimum. You tell them to do like four or five things, they do four. You tell them to do 20 to 30, they do 20. And those who do more really stand out right away. So that's just like a personal tip that could help somebody as well. Um, so Sarah has a question, and it's a kind of a great higher level question. Should we have a specific type of role in mind, like UX designer or researcher, interaction designer, UI, product designer, or is it okay to be a generalist in the beginning? Very common question.
So the trend is moving towards not just generalists within UX, but the uber generalists, as in even some of the product management stuff, even some of the development stuff with all these AI things. That said, though, my challenge for you guys is to answer this by doing your own research. Go to LinkedIn, Indeed, and these things and see what where the market is, what the market wants. Because at the end of the day, it's not about what you're trying to sell, but what the market wants to buy, right? So if the market is trying to buy a product designer and you see the qualification and you are a product designer, then call yourself a product designer. If they want to buy UX ninja and the qualification says that, then call yourself UX ninja because that's what that marketing thing again. Because sometimes people get hung up on the job title. Job titles are made up, right? So make sure that you look at the qualification. This is another thing that AI can help you with the research. Instead of synthesizing manually, you can just grab a bunch of these, have the AI look at the pattern for you and help you position yourself in a way that makes sense. And you can customize every single one. And there's no reason not to it anymore.
Yeah, that's a great point. And also, Sarah, to add to that, initially, while you're learning, you definitely want to learn the whole process, most of the phases, etc., right? Because, and then after that, if you do choose to specialize, it's then after the, that cliche phrase, T-shape, right? So essentially, you want to learn the basics, the fundamentals of the whole, of all of the phases, and then you can zoom in and to kind of focus more on one of them or still be a generalist, right? And I would also add, it depends on what you love, like what you'll enjoy doing, right? If you enjoy just the design phase, don't try to be a researcher or the other way around, right? Because you don't want to be hating what you do, right? And really like think critically, kind of with a goal in mind at first as well. And then also, like Danny said, look at the market, right? What is actually needed. Based on what I've heard also, I think from what Jacob Nielsen from what was saying is that AI may actually revive journalists, right? Because AI tools make people much more powerful, and basically one person would be able to do more different skills, right? More different things.
Hmm.
And and that said, I don't think it's going to be like it's not like it's not just going that direction, right? So we're still sure we'll have plenty of specialists and journalists. And I mean, of course, we're not fortune tellers, right? So we cannot predict what exactly will happen. Um, but yeah, something to consider as well. Danny, when a hiring manager evaluates portfolios,
Hmm.
do they give equal weight to all the case studies?
No, there's a bias towards what they want or what they need. Because the reason why a hiring manager is hiring is because they need help, right? Because they're already over capacity and they had to fight for that rec, for that position to be open, to get the budget approved and all that. And finally got approved after like few months of being overworked and like over capacity. So they're gonna look for somebody who can hit the ground running, which is why earlier the question from Salome about internship, a lot of companies don't do internship or don't take interns unless they have experience because no one has the bandwidth to actually train somebody new from scratch, especially if the market is basically full of people who can actually already hit the ground running. But yeah, so the bias is like towards what I need because everybody's selfish.
Okay, okay. And how important is the length and duration and the effort put in the project?
The length, so you mean the length of the project as in like 3 months versus 6 months, or the length of the case study
Yeah.
itself?
No. 3 months versus 6 months, or 3 days versus 6 years.
I think there is something to be said about like meaty enough to show that it's really depending on what I'm trying to assess, right? And at the end of the day, the end goal is I want somebody who can hit the ground running and help me again with my workload. So in that case, like a hackathon thing is good, but it's not going to be good enough. So if it's just a hackathon thing or like a fake project, like a student project, I would want to see something that's more robust, like a 3 months kind of thing. But if it's like also 2 years of internship, that could be overdone, and I'll be like, what are you doing with 2 years of internship? But learning nothing. That means that it's showing something else that that person is not being proactive.
Yeah, thank you, Danny. So basically, yeah, it's not all projects are created equal, same as experience, right? So it's if when we say that it's three case studies, it's one person could have completely different three case studies than somebody else, right? Someone can have three hypothetical projects that took them,
Hmm.
3 weeks to do, or even 3 weeks each. And someone else can have three robust case studies of real companies, right? That could take them, months or even years in some cases, right? So basically, you want to definitely consider that as well.
Yeah, and one thing to add to that, not all case studies need to be complete end to end. Especially if you're working with real clients, it's okay to have just, for example, if you're just doing from like usability study to one iteration as opposed to from the very beginning. Because the real world is messy. In fact, if I saw your portfolio, all the case studies are complete end to end, then I know that you're very green, that you don't have real world experience.
And that's Danny. So let me also ask you this. If it's not end to end, but you'd still probably want to see at least a few phases, right? So not just, let's say, if you see a case study that only has wireframing, right? Even though it's real, it's probably not going to be very strong, right? Unless it's like a purely wireframing job.
Yeah, so it needs to show that you can, again, you can do the job, right? Whatever I'm hiring for, like you said. So if I'm hiring for a product designer and you're not showing me how you connect the dots, just like the wireframing, is not good enough. So I would need to see what's what are you showing me essentially? What is it that you're trying to demonstrate?
Yeah. So it's yeah, because it's a good point because it's true that a lot of real client work, especially with limited budgets, right? It may not give you a full end-to-end project.
Mhm.
but you still want to show at least, a few key phases, right? So you're not just pigeonholed into this like very narrow, like UI only role or just visual only
Yeah.
role, or so it does make a stronger portfolio overall. Um, Danny, what I also want, and I love some additional questions coming in. Amazing. Keep those coming. Um, in your opinion, how has the rise of AI changed what hiring managers expect in portfolio projects?
Yep. I I don't know if it has actually changed in a big way yet because a lot of the managers, there are a lot of people in senior leaderships are still stuck in the old ways. So this is actually a really interesting transition time to position yourselves because a lot of companies are still waiting and see, like they do like the wait and see to see where this thing are going. Everybody like from the top say, use AI more, use AI more, but they don't know how, and they're still scared because of the data privacy. So in the interview process, I don't know if they've started requiring that, but I'm starting to see job description asking for generative AI experience as a nice to have. I think soon enough it will become a must have. But I know the intercom is a big one in this one. They already started like going crazy with it, going like really fast, and even getting the designers submit code, actually make changes to real production using like vibe coding and all these things. They have like the guardrails and everything. So it's moving in that direction in terms of the hiring process. Use this opportunity to actually get a leg up, right? Like to act if people only do like one round, like the minimum, like what Michael mentioned in terms of their like the homework project or what they take home, and you could do like 2 or 3 rounds, yours gonna be significantly better and you're gonna really impress them. You're gonna stand out. So really take advantage of that.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I want to take a question or two, and then before we get too far into like the job search stuff, etc. So Farouk was also asking, in your UX process using AI, do you conduct synthetic interviews produced by AI? Is this practice acceptable today? Like, I'm not sure, Danny, if you have any experience with that specifically, but maybe if let me know.
Synthetic interviews, I wouldn't, but because like it's the hallucination, it's going to just make the biases even worse. Um, but there are tools out there that are starting to get people to get like AI to do the moderation. So in that case, then I don't think the human should be replaced with like data from AI because that's just like a recipe for more hallucination.
Yeah, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I agree because ultimately, right, it's if you do that, how do you know if it is actually true? Because AI, like you said, Danny, right, AI hallucinates all the time, and I don't remember the
Mhm.
exact stats, but it's like 70% of the time it's correct or something like that. I don't remember. I'm not gonna like quote exact, but because I don't remember. But and the cost of mistakes is quite high, right? If you design a whole product and spend a lot of resources and money, etc., and then try to launch it, and then you realize that you only did synthetic research, right? And you actually
Mhm.
haven't talked to real people who will be using it. How do you know if it's true, right? So
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm sure there is a place for that in terms of like earlier heuristics, especially the synthetic data. If you train the model based on real human data, human behaviors data, like for example, from your analytics, from customer support and all these things, then yeah, potentially it could help almost like a heuristics essentially. So the next level of heuristic evaluation, but it doesn't replace dealing with real humans.
yeah, exactly. It basically seems like with other phases, with other areas, right? It's like it could be an interesting starting point. It could be quite useful, right? But it's augmenting what you do, not replacing what you do,
Correct.
right?
It's
So
like
it's
multiplying you. So that's what I like to use is AI is a multiplier. So for let's say there's a factor of three, multiply me by three. If I don't bring me, the one, if I bring zero, then it's zero. Zero multiplied by three is zero.
Exactly. And by the way, if you're interested in this topic specifically, right, I actually love what Jacob Nielsen wrote. He wrote so much and gave a lot of talks about this. Really cool, interesting stuff about like UX plus AI specifically. Like very interesting. Um, let's come back to this experience points and just finish that off and then move to another topic because it's so
Mhm.
important, right? Because every time, again, you look everywhere, these job postings, etc., you see these real experience requirements everywhere all the time. And so what I also wanted to ask you is why do you think it's actually important to have real client case, right? If you just kind of get back to the why, right? Why is it important to have real client case studies in your portfolio, not just hypothetical ones? Like, what's the difference? Like, in addition to what we already mentioned, what we already discussed.
I think the biggest one is the human messiness. When you're dealing with real humans, the the feedback and the interaction, the experience that you have with real people, with real client, will not be as clean as if it was like like I guess a hypothetical situation, right? And when I'm hiring somebody, I want somebody who's got that experience, who knows how to navigate that. Otherwise, then I will have to actually get involved again, which is not helping me with my workload.
Hmm. So human messiness, basically. Anything else
Yep.
that kind of tells, um, like any other differences of real versus hypothetical?
I think that's the biggest one. Other than that, it's really, and then the human part is knowing also like how to connect it to the business, right? The objectives. Because like with hypothetical, it's not as strict normally.
Yeah. It's also I've also heard about constraints, right? That's like a crucial part. Constraints and just working with stakeholders and basically incorporating soft skills usually, right? Because it's one thing to just sit there by
Mm.
yourself and vacuum and do something, and another thing to collaborate with others. Because you usually would collaborate with some kind of client, stakeholder, right? And so it's quite different, right? So that's what I've heard. Like one of the key um, differences and why companies actually look for that. Um, all right, let me see. No, from if you think about this from AI angle, right?
Hmm.
Um, do you think, and I think this is going to be the last question about real experience, unless we spend way too much time. I know this is like our bread and butter, but I think we spent a little bit too much time there. So is real world client experience more important than ever now? That's because AI can actually generate polished outputs quickly, and how can candidates show depth beyond pretty deliverables?
How can candidates show depth beyond pretty deliverables? Yeah, I think the user research part of it is actually the important part that's going to be more and more important because everybody can create, it becomes easier and faster to create the deliverables, the pretty deliverables. But then like evaluating that with the human, the user in mind will be the differentiator that make you stand out as somebody who actually knows how to do user-centered design.
Hmm. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, I feel like that's real experience become more important because basically AI will augment you, right? It will automate some tasks, right? And just basically make you much more productive. So again, it will be a little bit easier to get to these polished deliverables, but to show the soft skills part, right? That's I think that's where real experience also is important. So basically just wanted to add that as well. Um, so Danny, in your opinion, what do you think are, in addition to what we discussed, what do you think are the top 3 to 5 things that make a junior candidate stand out in the UX job market, specifically in the age of AI?
Yeah, I feel like the most important thing is to know how you're positioning yourself, right? And also this is learning a little bit of marketing. So experience is definitely a big one. So if you could have an experience like real world project or something that's real, that's one. And also have experience working with developer, having experience working with real business people, and like those quote unquote gimmicky stuff, trendy stuff to get people to notice, like new technology, VR, AI, this and that. So that to get people, the hiring manager to actually, in a way, not just pass. Oh, this is different. That's what standing out means. So really focusing on what can you do to become extraordinary.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good point. Um, so I want to take this quick question from Radhika. Let me know which one is which way is correct in the chat, because I don't want to keep mispronouncing your name. The question is, I love research, but it's difficult to get into research as limited opportunities and budget for research. And also, now that I already have much experience in end-to-end design with startups, as those are the only callbacks I ever got, still in dilemma, even after a master's. Any suggestions? Also got laid off just 6 months after working at a startup due to funding issues. So what should I say about this in interviews? Thank you.
So there, you love research, but unfortunately, research opportunities are way less than the general, and that's just the market, right? So my suggestion really is to position yourself as more general, but then once you're in, really build up the research practice, right? So make people love research also, because if you, again, extraordinary, you deliver what they want and then do more. Who's gonna say no to that, right? And in terms of the getting laid off by the startup, I don't think there's anything wrong with saying like the story as is. And especially now more and more, the whole like the gap people knows the market is hard.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think there's nothing wrong with, I mean, it's like thousands of people were in the same exact situation, right? So if it
Mhm.
was the other way around, if the market is like absolutely amazing, everybody just hiring left and right, and there's like huge deficit, etc., and then you're like fired after 2 weeks or something, maybe that would be different. Again, there could be different situations still, even taking that into account. But yeah, nothing wrong with that. Everybody's aware that the market has been tough, etc. So, and try to find the benefits, right? Try to just convey how much you have learned, how much you have delivered, even in that short amount of time, right? So
Hmm.
basically, flip the situation, find the benefits, find the positives, find the highlights, right? And also to add to that, because I know I mentioned that the suggestion to try to kind of strive to do what you love as much as possible. That's just my personal philosophy. And of course, it's not possible always to do 100%, right? So, and you're probably not going to enjoy 100% of like, doesn't matter what it is, your job, your own business, or whatever, right? So you just want to maximize that, right? So let's say if you love research and you're a UX analyst, right? Maybe you will love, 50% what you do. But as Danny said, once you're in the field, that's when you can pivot, move around, and maybe at some point focus more on just research, right? Or maybe you'll fall in love with some other tasks or some other phases of the process, right? Who knows? So the goal is just to, at least like personally, I try to follow that to just maximize it, right? It's not always possible to be like perfect. So let's see what else we have here. So um, anything else, Danny, in terms of, and I know we're running a little bit short on time, so but we'll try to take a few more questions and kind of then start wrapping up. Um, Anything else you want to share in terms of the biggest things that prevent newer and more junior candidates from getting hired to make them look less attractive to employers? Again, especially in this AI influenced hiring market.
Yeah, I feel like you do need to find ways to stand out and continue learning. One thing that would deter me from talking to you if you're hired, if you're trying to get hired in a position that I'm hiring for, is that if, let's say, you've been looking for, I don't know, like you finished your boot camp last year and you're still looking and there's nothing new. That kind of thing could deter me from talking to you. So my suggestion is to, even if you have to pay the bills, I understand that you do whatever you got to do. Don't stop learning, don't stop creating. So build something, even if it's just like for a friend, for yourself, continue gaining experience. Again, gaining experience doesn't require permission. No one needs to give you permission to gain experience. You can just continue designing. Do it for yourself, right? So you need to show up for yourself first, because then when you go into interviews, you have more confidence also because you've been doing it. The worst is that if you feel rusty because you haven't been doing it in a year, that's just gonna kill the momentum for you. So that's the other advice I would give.
Yeah, thank you. Um, any advice you want to give in terms of resume and LinkedIn?
With resume, my recommendation is to use AI to help you customize it, and then also do cover letter. With AI, there's no reason for you not to do it, but make sure that it still has your voice. And with LinkedIn, make noise. That's one thing that I highly recommend. Just read something, share, leave comment, make noise, right? Especially if you're trying to network with somebody, get on their radar by just liking their story, liking their post, commenting their stuff, so that it's not just a random person. So you can get in the radar, start building network that way. But instead of just trying to just apply cold, try to just position yourself again. Like that's also building your confidence.
Yeah, thank you, Danny. And by the way, what I also wanted to kind of ask everyone, if anyone has not asked a question, right? And maybe you were thinking, okay, I'm coming to this event, I'm coming to this virtual event, and I have this really burning question, and it hasn't been answered yet. So put that in Q&A tab, please. Right. So we want to make sure all those burning questions or something that's really in your mind, that's, you're really unsure how to do, how to solve, etc. And we'll try to find some solutions. Okay. So again, no questions, stupid. Please share as many as possible. Um, Danny, what I also wanted to ask you is, there are many search methodologies, right? So we often call them channels, right? Job search channels,
Hmm.
basically. Which ones are your favorite and why? And just to give a few examples, could be something like applying on company sites or job boards or recruiters or networking and informational interviews or friends or social networks, etc. Right? And also, has AI changed any of that?
The best opportunities come from relationships, right? And that's why I mentioned earlier making noise and like trying to network, but not network as in like, hey, my name is Danny, I need a job. Don't do that, right? Start with providing value and just like showing that you're interested in what they do. Just be normal, be humans first. That's the best channel. If somebody comes, like recently, actually, like somebody from my course got a job in one interview. One interview, she got a job because she got recommended directly, and then the hiring manager was kind of desperate and want to get like last minute thing, and it because she was highly recommended, she got the job in one interview. So just like one Zoom call, whiteboard challenge, done, offer. That doesn't happen without reference, right? And I'm not saying that that's a common thing or that's becoming the norm, but the best opportunities always come from relationship. Doesn't mean that you should stop applying, but make sure that you're making momentum as in like building relationships with people.
Yeah, exactly. It's basically coming back to the whole like relationship building and networking part, right?
Hmm.
And I always, probably in like every single event, whenever we talk about this point, I recommend this book on this topic called 2 Hour Job Search, like 2 hours. So it's like a catchy title, but it's not gonna take you 2 hours. What takes 2 hours is basically your initial system setup, and it's mostly focused on informational interviews and networking and how to do that effectively. And it's like a clear system. Steve Dalton is the author. I'm not affiliated. Unfortunately, I'll probably make a lot of money already, but yeah, great system. So highly recommend that. And so take a look at that book. Let me see. So Salome was also asking in terms of case studies, right? So Salome, lots of questions. Keep them coming. Um, when I know it's a pretty basic question, but yeah, I'd love to take it. When creating a case study, what are the important sections to add?
I think this is something that would show your process. So the section that show your process definitely have the problem, and then the process how you get to the solution, and then some kind of demo. So in terms of the exact things, I highly encourage you to do some kind of competitive research of other UX portfolios, right? Other case studies and see what's working and how they present it. That's part of your design process.
Awesome. And his or her other question was, if I enjoy just the designing part, is it better to be a UI designer?
It's the same question, the same answer that I would give the user research thing. Go look at the market first. Especially UI is changing significantly because UI stands for user interface, how we interact, how we interface with the machine. Now it's actually with AI, it's changing significantly with multimodal, meaning that there's the voice, there is the text interface, right? And then soon enough with AR, well, MR, mixed reality, there is the spatial potential gesture. So if you're talking about UI as in graphic design, as graphical user interface, you may end up disappointed if you end up like designing something that's not visual or graphical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and it's an interesting question, right? Because I feel like you basically need to learn a bit more about all these different UX phases and see if you're interested in anything else or just that final UI visual part, right? Because to be honest, right, based on like what I was researching, right, that could be one of the parts that is will be more automated faster, right? So if you like the thinking behind that, right? If you like the other phases, right, then maybe something like product design or maybe some role that basically has a little bit less research, but still has some strategy and thinking and decision making, etc. Right? So not purely visual because again, I'm not. That's just my personal opinion, but I would not focus on just purely visual, um, at least like not because yeah, based on the research, that's like some of the one of the areas that would probably be more automated in the near future and is
Mhm.
already being automated by all these different tools. Not 100%, you still need human involvement, but you probably want to be more skilled in these other phases as well to have better job security. All right, so we're almost out of time. Denny, in your opinion, what else has changed with regards to transitioning into UX recently compared to a few years back?
I think what's expected of the new, well, actually everyone, including the newer people, is to know the deeper level stuff to direct the AI because now it's almost like everyone starts being a manager because the AI becomes the junior. So learning how to learn and knowing how to give direction to the AI based on the solid foundational fundamental of UX is becoming more and more important and becoming a requirement. It's not fair that back in the day, you learn from somebody more senior and then you get experience so that you know how to direct at some point. Now it's expected of you to start on that level. But the good news is that with AI, you can actually learn that also. And also you can gain the experience faster using like these different methods, even including AI, or also like with the structured learning courses and whatnot. But yeah, experience becoming very, very key because that's how you actually know how to give direction to this uh junior minion of yours, the new AI, the new minion, the AI.
Awesome. Danny, before we wrap up, any final advice for someone trying to start a career or transition into UX right now in this interesting time?
If nothing else, please try to play around with some of these. If so I left my, I'm gonna do it again. I'm gonna left my LinkedIn. If you guys haven't connected with me, there is a free workshop that I did recently with Lovable. If you're curious, I can send it to you. But yeah, please lean into that and like gain experience as fast as you can, one way or another, and take advantage of this time, of this transition time.
Awesome, awesome. So that's great. So thank you so
Uh,
much, Danny. This was awesome. Um, and hope you guys enjoyed the event and got some great insights. So people often ask about our program, right? So as promised earlier, right, I'm going to tell you about it in a second. Before that, I actually want to give Danny an opportunity, a quick opportunity. Do you want to share maybe just a little bit? Because you mentioned your course. I'm
mhm.
sure, we have people who might be interested. Do you want to just do a quick highlight in terms of what the course is?
Yep. So the course, thank you for that. So the course is focusing on AI integration into UX workflow. So it's not just how do you say I, or it's not theory of it, but actually how do we multiply ourselves? How do we multiply productivity into like these different parts of UX process? So by the end of that, you have an AI project, but it's very hands-on. That's essentially what it is. From day one, you'll be able to already apply it to your job and multiply your productivity. That's the bottom line. Again, connect with me if you're interested. Again, this week we started the new cohort, but because it's week one, I could give you a good discount to get in and catch up if you want to get ahead. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, yeah, of course. And again, if this is something that you're interested in and want to learn more about, I would highly recommend because I've known Danny for years. He's like one of our original advisors for our company as well, and yeah, he's really good at what he does. I'm sure that course is awesome. So. As promised, right? So people often ask about our program that we also brought up earlier as well, right? So as promised earlier, so let me also tell you quickly about the program that we're running, since it may be a great opportunity for some of you to not just build a very strong real client portfolio and real work experience, but also get the crucial soft skills like team collaboration, client management, and presentation, along with the career prep to master UX job search and interviewing so you can actually land a UX role. So who this program is best for? The program is the best fit for ambitious people who know UX basics or come from a design, research, creative, tech, or related background and look to transition into UX in one of the most effective and efficient ways and without quitting their current jobs or other commitments if they have any. So we're also pretty selective and look for motivated and committed team players. So what is BeginX? It's a part-time UX career accelerator program with real mission-driven clients designed to help people transition into UX. We ran many cohorts, helped over 160 people or so transition into UX. Alumni of the program have been hired by companies that I mentioned earlier, SiriusXM, Coach, Google, ABC News, Meta, JP Morgan, many, many more. So the program was also ranked by SwitchUp as #1 this year, actually, and also featured in Fortune magazine and ADP list. The advisors and mentors are also practitioners from companies like Google, IDEO, American Express, The Economist, many others. What you gain after completing the program is build not just hard skills, but critical softer skills, real experience with a robust portfolio, expand your professional network, and master UX job search and interviewing so you can actually land a UX job. And in fact, the grads have done so well that we offer a money back guarantee. So you either land a UX job or you get your tuition back plus an extra 500 bucks of top of that. So some lunch money as well. If it sounds like you may be a good candidate, you can learn more on beginx.com. You'll see a link in the chat. Our cohorts are quite small and fill up quickly, so please act soon. Otherwise, even if you're a great candidate, sometimes you may still end up on the wait list. Also, to thank everyone in our community who attended this specific event, you'll be eligible for a $500 tuition credit, if accepted, of course. To claim that credit, what you need to do is by tomorrow, go to the website and you'll see the link in the chat again, and request a free, no commitment career transition consultation where we'll do a first UX job hireability assessment for you. And by the way, these sessions are designed to not just be some quick program pitch, right? But are designed to actually take a look at your background, your skills, and your experience. And it's okay if you're brand new. Identify what is possible for you to become a highly hireable UX job candidate. Uncover the key bottlenecks restricting your UX career transition progress. Create a personalized action plan that will actually get you the results, and also see if you may be a good fit for our UX Career Accelerator program. All right. So in addition to telling you about the program, I also wanted to briefly mention that we frequently run different types of virtual events. So we'll keep you updated about upcoming events and share resources via our newsletter that is usually sent every couple of weeks or so. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to our wonderful guest for taking the time to join us and provide all the valuable insights. It was a huge pleasure to have you here. And I know Danny already shared his LinkedIn. Danny, anything else you want to share in terms of getting in touch with you? Is LinkedIn the best, or what's the best
Yeah, I
channel?
think LinkedIn, and then actually I'll share the meetup group since you mentioned that. For those of you particularly in New York, would be great to see you, but we also have lots of virtual events so that you can be part of the community. And here is the meetup. Thanks for having me, Michael.
All right, it's amazing. Great to hear it, Danny. And thank you for joining us. And we'll see you guys at the next event.
Take care, guys. Bye.
Cheers.